all. Thank you. Okay, it looks like we are here. So our fabulous speaker today has his presentation up. If you all can put a thumbs up to let us know that you can see Just Sold, Buying and Selling Residential Real Estate with David B. Yes, thumbs up, perfect. So let's just jump right in, right? We know David, we know and love David. Let me be clear. The award-winning David of Leadership Houston, Best Class Ever 40. Let me tell you a little bit about David. According to his bio, David is a native Houstonian who is a broker associate with the Compass Real Estate Company. He leads BioCity Property Group team and focuses on helping buyers, sellers, and folks relocate into good old H-Town. Prior to entering into the world of real estate in 2017, David spent a decade, did you all know this, in both veterinarian and human health care administration. David, no idea. I had no idea. 2017.
Secret life.
Secret life. He is also an alum of both U of H Clear Lake as well as TWU. He resides in Houston's near north side with his husband and 3 furry kids, spending lots of time exploring and experiencing Houston's 5-star dining scene. He also has a passion for historic home preservations and professionally coaches new realtors through who are entering the industry. He has a passion for out-of-the-box marketing. David, I would have never thought that. He has this passion, which is going to be so wonderful and applicable to the conversation today, out-of-the-box marketing strategies, making complex market data digestible so that we all get it and understand, as well as real estate investing and helping families find the H-Town neighborhood that jives with their vibe. Your one, your only, David, take it away.
Thank you, Landi. Wow, good to see everybody here. I was expecting like 3, 4, or 5 people, so this is legit.
Show up.
Yeah. So, do you know what, Landi? Do we want to do? Where are we at? Do we want to do some quick announcements, or should we save announcements for the end?
Let's save announcements for the end. We'll make sure we allocate time for that. And just to kind of give you an idea about the flow, you all, this is us, right? So this is a conversation where David is here to share experience, some stats, some trends, some tips, tools, and techniques. How about that? He's going to share with you, right? But this is also an opportunity for us to learn and grow together. So you all may have questions. David, you're okay with them asking questions interactively as we go?
100%. Yeah.
100%. So this is interactive. We're on for about an hour, but we will make sure that we make this go quickly because we want to answer questions. You all don't have to save them for the end. I'll be, again, watching the chat, so you can drop questions in the chat if you want me to say them out loud for you, or just chime in or raise your hand there, and we'll make sure we get those questions answered. And then, as you said, David, we want to make sure that we leave time for any announcements that you have. So take it away.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thank you all so much for coming to our inaugural leadership series post graduation. So thanks to Sergio for coordinating and being the backbone to put this all together. So real estate, something obviously I'm super passionate about. Just to kind of give you a little bit of background. So most of the time, people don't grow up and say, I want to be a realtor, right? For most people, I've learned that end up in real estate, sort of it was an accidental thing, and that's honestly the case as it was for me. Tell you a little bit about that here as we go on. But the gist of what I wanted to share with you all today, hopefully give you some useful, interesting nuggets, is really kind of delve into a little bit about the buying side, a little bit about the selling side, and then give you an update on probably what most people I would imagine are interested in, which is for anybody that pays attention to real estate, what the heck is going on in this market that we've seen a shift in over the last few months. So like Landi said, if anybody has any questions throughout this, raise your hand, shout out. Thankfully, this is us, it's family, and you know, not some formal presentation in a boardroom. So we will do some announcements for the class at the end. Again, not going to spend a ton of time. We've spent time together, so y'all pretty much know who I am. The way really quickly I fell into real estate is in 2016, as Landi said, my past life was managing physician offices, and then prior to that, managing veterinary offices. I was native Houstonian, so I was always the guy when we were recruiting veterinarians, physicians, staff. I was always that guy that was driving around these people, showing them parts of Houston, talking to them about real estate just because I've lived here. And I got my license because I was like, you know what, I'm helping these people. Might as well kind of help close the deal, because I was just handing them off to a realtor after we'd like really find a house, and someone else was getting the paycheck. And I was like, you know what, I might as well get paid for doing 95% of the work. So that's how it all started, and never been in a sales job before. And so I always had the perception that in real estate you sell, and obviously, yes, we do sell. I was always intimidated by the idea of becoming a full-time realtor because there are over 30,000 licensed realtors in the greater Houston area. So when you think about that, you're like, holy cow, that's like some serious competition. But what I've learned over the past few years is like businesses that many of y'all are in, it's a relationship-based business. Most of my business, fortunately, has come from people that I already know, that are already in my life. And then over the last couple of years, people that those folks that I've helped have referred me to. And so it's been a great road. In 2022, 2 weeks ago, I sat for the Texas broker exam, which I passed. And so that's just basically a fancy name of saying if I ever wanted to go out and do my own thing, I could. And I have the opportunity, most importantly, to formally help other agents, which is something I'm super, super passionate about. I see a couple of hands up. I don't know if it was accidental or not. Kareem?
No, those were claps. First of all, congratulations on your broker's license. That is a big deal. You know, when you think about your ability to choose how to develop yourself, David, between Leadership Houston, between going after your broker's license, there is a distinction. And yes, you may help other agents, but the other reality is that you've invested in self to get that higher level of achievement and skill to be able to help your clients. So you were just getting some claps. So that's what you saw.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. And then Kareem also was just kind of clarifying that this is probably a conversation mostly about residential. Is that correct? Or will there be any touch upon commercial was the other question.
Yeah, mostly residential. That's really where my focus has been. Yeah, so mostly on the residential side.
Cool. You've answered all the questions. And if you see things going on, I got you covered over here. Okay.
Perfect. Sounds good. So yeah, so that's, you know, a little bit about, you know, where I've been, where I'm at, and, you know, kind of goals for ourselves on the team is, again, part of my big passion is helping others develop. And so we've got a couple of newer agents on our team, and I've been fortunate to help them start growing their business. So let's dive into it. Wanted to, of course, try to make this practical, but not boring. We'll focus a little bit on the buyer side. This sort of flow chart here, for anybody that's bought a property before, you've probably experienced and gone through this process. And so I wanted to include this, but I don't want to really spend a lot of time on it because this is the boring stuff. You know, you find a realtor, you get pre-qualified with the, you know, with a lender, start looking at properties, and then, you know, a lot of this is kind of the standard transactional stuff. Obviously, this is what, you know, what a realtor primarily helps with is navigating throughout this entire process. So that's in there for y'all. If anybody has any specific questions about this, happy to answer. But just wanted that to be in there as a resource. What I wanted to do though is I kind of picked 3 things to focus on the buyer side, and then 3 things to focus on the seller side that are sort of what I would consider bigger things that we try to coach our clients through when we're helping them through a transaction that are sometimes either missed or harder points to sort of create the value behind. So on the buyer side, so when we're working with buyers, very first and foremost thing is just being prepared. I know that sounds kind of silly, but a lot of times, when folks start looking at homes, it's like, you find your realtor and then you kind of hit the road running. And in the past, before the market that we've been in for the last couple of years, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But because the market was so competitive for the last couple of years, what it allowed us to do is really get a little bit better about sitting down, having a conversation about what the offer process looks like, understanding it, and just sort of going through all of that before you hit the ground running. I can't tell you how many clients that, eventually find their way to us because they worked with a realtor that they just either haven't jived with, or they've lost in multiple offer situations. And as silly as it sounds, taking 30 minutes to kind of go through what's on your wants list, what's on your needs list, and then just understanding what it looks like when we find a home that we want to truck forward on, really just makes the whole thing go a lot smoother and gets everybody on the same page. Another thing that sometimes we have a hard time coaching clients through is there are smaller updates, or I would say easier updates that can be made to a home that create a lot of change, and little things like, a coat of paint, changing out floors, changing out countertops. A lot of folks, and myself included, oftentimes have a hard time walking into a home that's not turnkey, that doesn't look like Chip and Joanna have already sprinkled their glitter and done their thing on it. A lot of times we have a hard time kind of going in and saying, a fresh coat of paint would look like this and would totally change the space. And so that's what we try to coach our clients through on the buying side as well. Because a lot of times those are the homes that don't have 5-10 offers that people are competing against. And B, everybody wants a deal. And a lot of times those are the homes that, because people can't walk in and just see everything already done, those are the homes that oftentimes we have negotiating leverage on. So that's the other thing we kind of coach our clients through. And then the third tip that I feel like is overlooked sometimes when we're making offers, especially in competitive situations. Even though the market has slowed down some, we are still regularly seeing, homes that are in desirable areas and that are priced right, have multiple offers come in. And so one of the things that we try to do is find out what's important to that particular seller. So, for that particular seller, maybe, a shorter closing so that they can get out quickly is important to them. Maybe it's a longer closing. Maybe they need to close and then stay in the home for 2-3 weeks afterwards so that they have their cash in hand and then they can close on their next property. Finding those things out oftentimes has kind of been a really key thing that's helped us win in multiple offer situations, when those are things that we can be flexible on, of course, on the buyer side. And, one thing we always tell our clients is that, to that particular seller, it might not be price that they're 100% looking for. It doesn't mean that you can go in, $50,000, $100,000 under list. But if, you have very similar offers, and one of the offers has what that seller needs timeline wise, that might be what pushes you up to the top. So finding out what's important to the seller is, you know, something we always try to do and see if we can work with that on the buyer side. So another thing, you know, just little things matter in real estate. And again, you know, one couple of those little things that we do, you never know who you're working with on the other side of the transaction. You know, are you working with a family that's relocating that has a very sentimental attachment to the home? Are you working with a CPA that's all about the numbers? He doesn't care if you have 2 children, 8 children, how successful your children are, how much you're going to love the home. He's a numbers person. And so when we present offers, we try to sort of touch on both of those potential types of sellers on the other side. And sometimes that's with what realtors aptly know as love letters, you know, which is just a letter that's who you are and, you know, why you're going to be good stewards of the home. And then, you know, another way we kind of tackle that is really kind of putting together an offer summary letter whenever we submit an offer. It's just those bullet points of here's the money, here's the key points of the transaction, so that whoever's on the other side is, you know, hopefully being, we're getting to them regardless of what type of person or personality they are. So just threw a couple of those little samples up there.
I have a question.
Yes.
Which type of seller do you find easiest to work with?
Oh, good question.
Not a lawyer, right?
What's that?
Not a lawyer.
Not a lawyer. That is exactly correct, Kareem.
Hey.
We love our lawyers, but man, when it comes to real estate, sometimes they love making our lives, I'm not going to say it, you can assume it, but we love our lawyers, right? But you know what, honestly, Kareem, a lot of it depends on what our buyer is like as well, you know, because if you're trying to match somebody that's kind of more of the emotional person with somebody that's the numbers person on the other side, you kind of have to, it's a balancing act, you know? So my personal preference is I like numbers people, you know, because at the end of the day, numbers are, you know, black and white, and it's a lot easier to build a case. So yeah, so I'm a fan of numbers people, and I generally feel like things move a little bit more efficiently when there's a numbers person on the other side. So this really just touches on the fact that, you know, as we're training new agents, we kind of go through this, but there's not, when you're negotiating a contract and the lawyer's probably
David, I think David, can you hear me? I think you froze.
negotiating points. And
David, excuse me, I'm sorry. Can you hear me? I think you froze for a second.
I can hear you.
You can. Yeah, we can hear you again clearly now. Do you mind?
Okay.
And I'm getting feedback from the chat that other people said you froze as well. Just turn off your camera for 1 second and then turn it back on and you should be fine. It's probably the connection. It's been a wonky day for tech. I can tell you that. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. And then just turn it back on. Thank you, friend. So we did not hear, I think the last thing you were talking about that we could hear where you were talking about numbers and you said, I like numbers people, numbers are black and white. I think that's about the last thing we could hear.
Awesome. Yeah. So, yeah, so what I was saying after that is, you know, kind of getting back to the contract and negotiations, there's over 10 items that can be negotiated in the standard Texas real estate contract. So, you know, we try to explain that to buyers and we try to, again, just sort of focus on, you know, what's important to the seller when we can. And so, you know, I'm not going to go through all this in detail, but the important part is, you know, just to remember that it's not always 100% about the sales price. And if anybody has any questions about that, of course, happy to answer. Okay, so seller considerations. So
I'm so sorry, I was trying to come off of mute. So I got in the chat, you said there are over 10 different items that can be negotiated from the buying side. Just keep that in mind, that it's not always about just the sales price, is what we heard you say. One of the questions that we had was regarding like things like foundation. If you get the foundation repaired, is that, does that increase the price?
So good question. So I'm thinking that this is probably somebody sort of thinking from like the seller's perspective.
Yeah, the question specifically was, does repairs like foundation, et cetera, increase or decrease property values?
Yeah, good question. So when it comes to repairs and updates, it's really one of those like case by case things, I guess, if you will. With something like foundation, for instance, if there is a known foundation defect, that is something that the seller has to disclose, of course, on their seller's disclosure that they provide the buyer. If there has not been repairs and there's known problems, that's probably that's going to be a pretty big red flag for potential buyers and realtors as well. So because that's a major system and it's something that has to be disclosed, that's probably something that generally you're going to want to have repaired before you go on the market, because it's something that very likely is going to come up during inspections and is going to become a negotiating point. So yeah, along the lines of foundations, we see a lot of homes that have had foundation work. We see a lot of folks that do foundation repairs, unfortunately, with not so credible companies. And so an experienced agent on the buyer side, when they see a home that has had foundation work done, they're going to ask for two things most likely. They're going to ask, number one, is there a lifetime warranty on that work that's been done? Number two, they're going to want to know if that warranty is transferable. And then the third thing, sounds kind of silly, is that company that did the work still in business? So like I said, there's a lot of foundation repair companies that are mom and pop operations that are sort of come and go. And even if they offered a warranty, it really doesn't matter because they're not around. And so there's no one to service that warranty claim. So yeah, so good question. So yeah, foundations are typically something that we have repaired. And then other things, like I said, we kind of coach clients through on a case-by-case basis. That answer whoever's question that was?
I'm doing a thumbs up. I think so. We don't have any other buyer questions. Thank you, David. Looking forward to hearing about selling. And we got a thumbs up. Yes, that did answer the buyer question.
Awesome. Sounds good.
Thanks,
Okay.
Kareem.
So seller considerations. So I like working on both sides of the transaction. I feel like I gravitate more towards the selling side, just because it's a lot more sort of about marketing, and it's a lot more of a a numbers. There's numbers involved in every aspect of real estate, but yeah, personally like gravitating towards the seller side. So some big things on the seller side that we oftentimes are coaching people through. So obviously staging and prep. My personal philosophy, and I've heard this from one of my mentors, there's only three things that sell a home, three variables. So location, condition, and price. And so if a home is not selling, one of those things has to be modified. And so we usually can't modify a home's location, right? We can't plop up a home one part of town and drag it to another part of town. So that leaves us with pricing and condition. And so we see so many homes, unfortunately, that come to market not showing their best. And so, one of the things that we've learned is the way you look that first week that you come on market is kind of a make or break it, and I'll show you some numbers that support that here in just a second. So like I said, big things that we talk through are making sure that the home is staged and properly prepped and that it's showing like it's going to win that beauty contest. because half of selling a home is a beauty contest. How we market, and then of course, pricing a home right. And so I think I'll come back to that here in just a second. One second.
David, while you're pulling that up, you said that there are 3 things that can be considered when you're thinking about selling your home. There are 3 considerations. It was location, which to your point, we cannot change the location of the home in general, unless you have wills, right?
Yep.
These tiny homes. And then you said price, and you mentioned the first, when that home is first put on the market, that's critical and important. I'm sure you'll go into that. And then the last was?
Condition.
Condition. All right.
Yeah. Pricing, location, pricing, and condition. So, yeah, so we're gonna.
David, this is Jerry. I have a quick question.
Yeah, Jerry.
What like in general, a new roof, does that, like if you put a new roof on and then you sell your house right after, are you going to recoup the cost in the selling price, or does it not add 100% of the value back?
You're probably not going to see 100% of the value unless you've got like roof leaks and big stuff that's going to definitely come up during inspections. But let's just say you have an older roof, but it's still doing its thing. It's still working just fine. It's likely that during inspections, the inspector is going to say, hey, this guy's worn, but he's still working fine. You have a few years. So we don't generally recommend to our clients that they change out a roof just because of age if it's working okay.
Gotcha. Okay. And then one other question, and this might be a little particular to me, but I'm sure all of you know, people that flooded. We flooded in Harvey out here in Cinco Ranch, but we flooded because of upstream. They opened the floodgates to try to save Houston, right? Is that something that is seen as as like it's just a one-time freak incident, or do you think that's going to permanently affect the property values of these homes that did flood during Harvey?
Yeah, good question. Something we deal with pretty regularly. So what we have seen, regardless of kind of really what caused the flooding, the further away we've gotten from Harvey, the less of a stigma that flooding carries. Especially, even though we haven't had anything drastic since Harvey, we've still had some pretty heavy rains, different periods of time. And so I want to say as a generality, we're seeing less and less of Harvey flooding affecting property value in homes that have not taken on water after Harvey. The reality is, it's hard to like 100% correlate that to values, because what happened in the market, over the last couple of years is a one-off, with values like skyrocketing and things selling for, significantly over list, over market. But I feel like the stigma is further and further away, and it's going to be less of a value concern, as we continue to get away from Harvey.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I can tell I don't sit in my office a lot because the little light thingy is turning the light.
Going dark there.
Yeah. So really quickly, just to kind of touch on, I'm a numbers guy. So this is something we oftentimes share with our sellers. We want to sell a home for the highest dollar amount when we're on the listing side, just as much as our clients do. Obviously, we work on commission. We want everybody to walk away, on the seller side with the most amount of money in their pocket. But what is important to see is this sort of triangle here correlates to 0% being market price, 5% being over market, and then of course 10 and 15% over market. When you price a home over market, you automatically start excluding potential buyers. And if you think about it, a lot of people search for homes like in chunks of dollar amounts, 350, 400. So if you take a home, let's just say that has a market value of 400 and price it at 410, even though we're only talking about a $10,000 difference, $10,000 delta, you have automatically excluded a large percentage of what your buyer pool potentially could be. You know, slightly pricing it over market almost cuts the potential eyeballs looking at that listing in half. And so that's why pricing according to market, or even sometimes slightly under market, really helps you walk away with the most money in your pocket. That's a hard conversation to have sometimes, or for sellers to grasp. But I can tell you from experience, we see it time and time again when we have a seller that's open to us, letting us take the reins and guide them. When we can price that home just a titch under market, it drives in multiple offers, it drives in multiple eyeballs, and naturally that's what, you know, allows us to go back and call for a best and final, because we've got multiple offers in and drives pricing up.
David, I have a question.
Yeah.
On the same topic, I think if you hire 5 different realtors, you will get different sell price or market price. So for a seller, it's hard to tell what is the right market price. What's your thoughts on that?
That's true. It's a matter of opinion, right? And so
Right.
some homes are harder to comp out, just because it's an area that either homes vary quite a bit, or there just aren't a lot of sales that, you know, happen. What I try to encourage folks to do is try to understand the numbers, you know, as much as possible. Because when it comes to comps, even though there might be homes that are different, there's some standard adjustments, you know, that we can oftentimes make for like bedrooms, bathrooms, things like that. So hopefully the realtor that you trust the most has the ability to kind of talk through the logic of, you know, why they're recommending the pricing that they're recommending. But I think for lack of better way of putting it, it really does come down to trust, you know, working with somebody that you trust, and then working with somebody that can validate why they're recommending, you know, the price that they're recommending. Because you're right, it is, you know, it's very common for us to go into listing appointments, you know, clients that were referred to us, and, you know, why are you, you know, pricing it $10,000 under? Why are you pricing it $20,000 more? And, you know, and we need to be able to explain that. So that's the whole thought process on pricing, why pricing is important. The other thought process is, take a look at this chart right here. So what this is showing us is on any new listing, again, the number of eyeballs on that listing. So when you hit that 2-week mark on the market, you can see obviously this drastic shift down on number of eyeballs. So strategy that we commonly use and we encourage our clients to, you know, to follow our lead on is, I'm predicting, those other realtors are predicting, but the market is truly going to tell us if we're priced high, if we're priced low, or right on, you know, right in line. And so if we don't get, for instance, we don't get 7 showings on a listing within the first week, that means we're most likely priced over market. So we typically will make pricing adjustments at that first week so that we still have another week to kind of capture the high number of eyeballs. We do not typically like to wait more than 2 weeks before making that adjustment, simply because that's when the eyeballs start decreasing, and we want to maximize how many people are looking at us. Does that make sense? This was one of our coolest success stories in December of last year. So rarely in real estate do we get to have like a side-by-side comparison of you know, what staging and, you know, what preparing a home appropriately does to the list price. So we were fortunate to have a listing in a townhome community right next to the Heights, the Arts District. I think we have some people on our call from the that went into the Arts District. So Anyway, but really long story short, so these are two townhomes that were for sale. We had the left one, 2113 Colorado, 2115 Colorado was the other unit in the community that was for sale. And you can see that our unit sold for almost $450, and the unit at 2115 Colorado, exact same size unit, sold for $389. And I'm not gonna bore you, but you know, it was a unit that wasn't staged. They didn't do basic updates like painting, and so long story short, staging and updating really make a difference. Our folks did spend about $10,000 getting this home ready for market, but as you can see, that $10,000 made them really, you know, almost another $50,000. So, all right.
Great comparison, David. Just a quick question for you, kind of along those same lines. One of the questions is, do open houses, do they count as showings?
We do not, no. So we use open houses on our listings kind of as a gauge or a barometer, if you will. But we want to see 7 actual agents that have scheduled private showings walking into our listing that week. Just because open houses are oftentimes, you know, again, without going off into a tangent, open houses are usually a tool for realtors to meet potential buyers that don't have representation, that aren't already working with a realtor. Yes, it does get eyeballs, you know, in the house, on the listing, but the people that are serious, that are usually offer ready, they're usually working with an agent or at least trying to get into that house as soon as it's listed versus like waiting for an open house. So we do not use traffic at an open house to gauge, you know, true buyer interest.
Thank you. We are tracking it. Please continue to add any questions that you have directly in the chat. We're headed into market trends. So this is the, of course, like, what do we predict? I'm so excited about this, to learn more about this. But if you have questions, you all jump in. This is us, right? So jump in, come off of mute and ask away. David is prepared to answer your questions, or drop them in the chat. I am keeping an eye over there.
Cool, awesome. So I'm going to give you a little, really quick 2-minute snapshot into the Houston market, and then let's look at the national market, a little 2-minute snapshot. So as anybody that's been watching the news, or, you know, whether you indirectly or directly pay attention to real estate, you've probably heard something about the real estate market has changed in the last few months. I'd say probably like March, April-ish is when we started seeing a shift in the market. And so one of the biggest shifts that we've seen that I'm not really going to touch on too much is interest rates. So interest rates started going up. And so right when that happened, and really what's been going on, you know, for the first 2 months after that happened, is everyone was kind of, a lot of people went on pause. You know, our interest rates going to continue to rise. Our home price is going to fall drastically because interest rates are rising. And so here's some hard data to kind of show you what is going on. So this is comparing July, or last month, of 22 to July of 2021. And so we have seen a drop in property sales, not unexpected, again, with interest rates climbing and a lot of people deciding to pull out and sit on the sidelines on the buyer side to see how it's all going to play out. So we've seen listings, sales drop. We have seen, what was I going to point out here? So this is pretty interesting. This is Mr. Little arrows in the wrong place here, but check this out. So single family average sales price. So sales prices have not dropped, right? The sales prices are still trending, have been trending upwards at, you know, 10% increase over July of last year. So although sales are dropping, we haven't seen a downward trend yet in prices dropping. Personal prediction is we are going to start seeing that towards the, you know, as the year progresses, but do not foresee us seeing like a drastic drop that we saw like back in 2007, 2008. This market's very, very different than what was going on back then. You know, a lot of the market chaos back then was driven by subprime lending, lots of people getting loans for their, you know, big bougie houses that they shouldn't have been buying. And that's not what has happened. That's not what's going on right now. Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, all of our big lender folks have really tightened up on their lender regs. And so we're not seeing, and we haven't seen subprime lending for a long, long time since all of that. So anyway, so number of sales going down, expected. Sales prices are not going down, but really cool thing for buyers that are trying to figure out, should I buy now? Should I not buy now? So we are seeing an uptick in inventory. So more homes coming on the market or staying on the market. So check this out, 30% more homes available compared to July of last year. So what that means for buyers is you got more options to choose from. The good part is, I think as the year goes on, we are going to see some more pricing flexibility, simply because we've got more inventory that's, you know, that's coming on market, that's not moving as fast. So,
all right, David, question.
Yeah.
Based on the trends, you know, people are moving to Texas, right? And they're moving to Houston specifically. And I've been hearing on the news, I listen to Bloomberg radio all the time, and they're always talking about shortage of housing units. Like there's not enough housing units out there. And what are you seeing that is a long-term trend that's going to mitigate, you know, some of these other factors, the fact that there's a lot of people are moving to Texas and to Houston in particular, or is it all, you know, fluid?
No, so our demand is still, you know, still steady. I think Houston is a market that's going to continue seeing an influx of, you know, of demand. So, you know, so I don't think, so summarize your question for me one more time, Jerry. I think I was going off.
Yeah, no, so I'm hearing there's two different things here. One is that there's a national shortage of housing, right?
Yeah.
And that the pandemic, you know, things for the last couple of years, builders stopped building. So now we're coming back out. So now there's just a general shortage of housing. But then the other thing is that interest rates are rising. But then the third factor is people are moving to Houston. So I'm trying to figure out how all three of those things fit together in terms of, you know, where you see the market going.
Right. And so I think the combination of all those three factors is kind of what's creating, what will create the reality of housing pricing not falling drastically like a lot of people are potentially were predicting earlier this year with interest rates climbing. So I don't think housing prices are going to crash just simply because the demand that exists in Houston. And I'll show you a couple slides here in just a second that show you sort of what new start build, you know, being significantly less than, you know, what it was in 2007 and 2008. So I think what we're seeing right now is a market that's normalizing, getting closer to normal. But I think prices are still going to stay steady just because, you know, overall, just because of demand is still there and will still most likely be there.
Thanks.
Yeah. So one kind of barometer realtors and those in the industry use is how many months of inventory do we have? So 6 months of inventory is considered a balanced market. So sort of equal number of buyers, sellers. And so last year we were at 1.7 months of inventory. So it would take 1.7 months to sell all of the inventory based off of average number of sales per month. So that means that last year was a really, really strong sellers market, right? Sellers had a huge advantage because again, balanced is 6, we were at 1.7. So that number has ticked up, obviously, as we talked about, 30% more listings this year. So we're closer to 2.5 months of inventory. But take home message is it's still a very favorable sellers market. You know, we're still very far from that 6 months of balanced inventory. So.
And then David,
Hey,
along
David,
those,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
go ahead, Bo, I'll remember.
Oh, so David, just out of like kind of just curiosity. So are you seeing a lot of times, or at least in my experience, you know, in buying the few houses that we bought. You know, we were always buying and selling at the same time. You know, it's moving from one house to the other. I'm just curious, are you seeing a trend of a lot of people trying to, you can't see my finger quotes, but kind of cash out, you know, kind of trying to, you know, take advantage of these hot prices with the thought of, like you mentioned earlier, that, you know, maybe I can lease or rent or do something else for a couple of years and then buy back in, you know, somewhere else lower? Or are you still seeing it pretty balanced? Is that a lot of people who are selling or are flipping that into, you know, buying another house? Just kind of curious.
Yeah, so we have not seen a lot of people that, you know, like you said, are trying to cash out and then, you know, move into something else, if they are, of course, staying in the city. And the reason is, man, is just because it's like, okay, you know, yeah, you cashed out, you might have pulled out, you know, your $200,000 in equity, but last year trying to get that next home under contract was a big maybe, you know, and a big risk. And, you know, before the busy market that we had the last couple of years, you could buy your new home on contingency, right? Here's my offer, but my offer is contingent on selling my existing home. Those contingencies we saw kind of go out the window last year, just with as competitive as, you know, as the market has been. We are starting to see that come into play more. So we've actually had a couple of offers come in on our listings that have had contingencies to sell their existing home. So that makes that process a little easier. But it's mostly the people that we're seeing doing that are people that really have I need to do this sort of situation. Like, we just had another kid and the 2-bedroom, you know, house isn't working, or, you know, similar type situation like that.
Just real quick, David, thank you. Thank you for answering that. Hopefully, Bo, that was helpful. Talk about a little bit about neighborhoods, if you would. The question is related to, you know, are there good neighborhoods to invest in, or we should be looking at as investments? And just FYI, I know a couple people are going to be jumping off here to go to their next meeting on the hour. Thank you for all your questions. Please keep them coming. We'll make sure that we send out this recording. So even if we don't get to it, we'll make sure we answer the question and send out the recording to answer all the questions. So related to the neighborhood, any suggestions on good neighborhoods, quote unquote good, I'm doing air quotes for investments, as good investments?
Yeah, good question. So lots of different types of investment strategies out there in real estate. I am a true investment nerd. So that's really kind of what sparked me getting into real estate. Initially is just more of as an investment vehicle. So we have about 5 rentals right now. And then the last couple of years, I've personally gotten into buying and holding land. So my personal philosophy, which is, you know, something I'm happy to share, is in a nutshell, is yes, there are areas that are good to invest in. I personally live by the philosophy that our central parts of Houston are never going anywhere, right? Texas Medical Center is never going to get up and move because we're talking about acres and acres of infrastructure. Downtown's never going anywhere. Although, you know, the number of people obviously coming into downtown for work, you know, has decreased. It's still an epicenter of Houston. There are very few pockets of areas that have quote unquote affordable land that are within 15 minutes of that central, you know, area. And so that has been my personal investment strategy, and what I've helped a lot of my clients with is targeting those areas that are like 3 to 5 years out from blowing up as far as development goes, because those are, again, never going anywhere. They're always going to be about 10 or 15 minutes from downtown. So there's a couple of zip codes, and I'm happy to have conversations with anybody about, you know, kind of what I'm keeping an eye on. Last year, I bought heavily in an area called Acres Homes, which is about 15 minutes north of the Heights. A lot of development happening over there just simply because the Heights is the place to be. But it's about a $500,000 entry point to get in the Heights. And a lot of first-time homebuyers, you know, don't have that financial means. So what that's done is it's caused areas, you know, 10 minutes away from there to really spark in development with, you know, affordable housing that's in the mid 300s, you know, more reasonable price point for your first-time home buyer or recent college graduate. So Acres Homes has already seen a lot of development. There's another wave. It's a zip code called 77028. It's a little bit north of 610 and east of 59 and 45, but also within 10 or 15 minutes of downtown. So I'm always happy to nerd out about this stuff because I'm actively investing, and it's something that, I think is a great wealth building tool.
And David, before you go to the next slide, we got about 5 more minutes. So we did have one more question regarding, is it better to rent or do a short-term rental? And we do want to provide a little bit of time for announcements here at the end. People are hopping off and saying, thank you, thank you, thank you. They're going to email you. They'll follow up with some questions.
Please do.
Yeah, so please do. David's saying, bring it on. So the question is regarding rental or regarding investing. Is it better to do it rent or as a short-term rental for investment properties?
Yeah, so sort of take home message is the numbers look generally for most places a lot better with a short-term rental. As far as like what your net number is going to be, most of the time it is very area specific. So buying strategically, regardless, is important. The thing you have to keep in mind with short-term rental is your time and management commitment is much greater than with a long-term rental. So you're either outsourcing, to a third-party management company and giving them a nice chunk of what your profits are. Typically about 20% is what I've seen for them to handle scheduling and just maintenance. So numbers oftentimes look more favorable for short-term rentals, but your management costs and your time commitment are also greater. But again, also happy to nerd out with anybody about that as well. I'm going to run through this super quickly just so we can get some, see we have a couple minutes for questions and announcements. Really quickly, just on the national scale, just to kind of give you some quantifiable numbers. So pricing is driven ultimately by supply and demand, right? Super basic. I'm not an economist, but we all know that. So take a look at supply here. So comparing inventory, used home inventory, 2007 through 2022. You see that in 2022, our used home inventory is about a quarter of what it was in 2007. Again, supports the fact that supply is low. Same thing with new home starts. New home starts, 2007, 2008, over 2 million, 2020, 1.38 million. So a significant drop. And then on the demand side, a couple little factoids or pointers. So supply is down. So what's going on the demand side? So boom, more demand. So 5 million more when we're looking at what we call the prime home buyers. So those are going to be people in their 30s. So supply is down, demand's up. And then another factor that we look at too is the number of households. So 12 more million households that are out there in light of lower supply. That's kind of what I have for y'all. Hopefully that was useful, but any questions on here, happy to answer. And I know Landi has a couple announcements for us too.
I think you answered all the questions. Unless you guys are coming off mute, please do, just to get you off here on time. Yes. Congratulations to Stephanie, who is now at the Beloved community. She's their new COO, is the announcement we wanted to share with you there. Also, I'm going to share my screen for 2 seconds real quick here. Wanted to make sure that you all knew that, hopefully you can see that, on Tuesday, the 23rd, the Buffalo Soldiers Museum is celebrating 105 years later. So make sure to check, I think, in our group chat on the 23rd. Desmond, any questions on there, you can reach out to him for that, as well as a evening with Beto coming up on the 24th. So if you have any questions there, I think Kelly put that one in the chat. And then a big congratulations to the the president for the International Live Events Association, Mr. Rita herself. So we want to celebrate her. And more than anything, thank you, Sergio, for all that you've done to pull us together in our first inaugural. I think this was pretty darn amazing. David, you nailed it. Great information. Anybody else? Congratulations to all the winners of great and big things. A big shout out to Sergio again for pulling us together. David, thank you, thank you, thank you. We appreciate you.
Oh my gosh, so welcome. Hopefully everybody got a little nugget or two.
You were amazing. Board things are due on the 25th, says Kelly. We need applicants. And Pat said, thanks to everyone. Ben is going to check you out at the next happy hour. Want to make sure to get you all off. I know you have more meetings coming up. So have a wonderful rest of your day. David, great information. Thanks for sharing. Everyone is saying
Thanks, everybody.
great job.
Thanks,
Awesome.
David.
Yeah, thank y'all
Thanks.
for coming. All right, have a good afternoon.
Thank you. That was amazing, David. So proud of you.
Thank you.
We'll be in touch soon.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, bye-bye. Bye, Landi. Thank you for moderating.
Bye, looking good. Hello there, beautiful.
Thank you, gorgeous. Trying to keep up. Bye,
Have a
y'all. Have a
great
good
day.
one. Okay.
Sergio, great job. So proud of you pulling us together. Thank you, my friend. You did great. I have
Great job, y'all. Until next time. Great work.
All right.